In 2021-2022, the Florida Panthers were at the top of the hockey world. With a 58-18-6 record, they led the NHL with 122 points, scored an unbelievable 340 goals, and only let in 246. With those stats, they would win the President's Trophy as the best team in the regular season in the entire league. With trade deadline acquisitions, Claude Giroux, Ben Sherratt, and Robert Haig, along with a couple others, this team seemed to be unstoppable. When the playoffs came along, they eliminated the 2018 champions, the Washington Capitals, in 6 games for them to move on to the second round for the first time since 1997. However, their run would come to an abrupt end as they were swept by their neighboring rivals, the Tampa Bay Lightning, 4-0. And whether they knew it then or not, that was going to be the best chance they had at getting a Stanley Cup. Between June 22nd and July 22nd, that was argued as the downfall of this Florida Panthers powerhouse. And some would argue the problems were pointed out way before that 1-month period, as when you have a powerhouse team like the Florida Panthers, you gotta pay off everyone. And that's the issue that this all tracks back to. Money. With some of their key players like Claude Giroux, Ben Sherratt, Robert Haig, and Mason Marchment coming off the books in 2022, and then Jonathan Huberdeau and Mackenzie Weegar coming off that next year, there was going to be a lot of cap flexing for the Florida Panthers to make this work. And in the end, they didn't. Many would argue the biggest problem for the Florida Panthers right now would have to be their coaching. Andrew Brunette was this coach for the Florida Panthers for the majority of the season after Joel Quenneville was released when the allegations were announced against him. Given what happened this season, I would imagine a lot of Florida Panthers fans wanted Brunette to come back as the permanent coach. However, Bill Zito had other plans, and many would argue this was the first of many moves that caused the downfall of this team. Them hiring Jets coach Paul Maurice. To the vacant eye, many people would see what Paul Maurice did with Winnipeg was actually pretty solid, and bringing him into the Florida Panthers fold could actually make this team better. Wrong. Now, despite not being named the permanent head coach, Florida did still want Andrew Brunette to come back as probably an assistant coach. However, Brunette saw a much better opportunity in New Jersey, where he left on July 13th. And it really does not look good for the Florida Panthers as the Devils are top 5 in the league and the Jets are another really solid team that are also above the Florida Panthers in the standings right now. Now, little did Panthers fans know, the craziest part of their offseason was still yet to come. On July 22nd, the blockbuster deal between the Panthers and the Calgary Flames erupted. Now, remember how we said Jonathan Huberdeau and Mackenzie Weegar needed to be extended to big contracts come the end of 2022-23. Now, whether the Panthers didn't have the cap space to sign those two players, or they just didn't want to have to go through the issues of signing them, they didn't have to. They dealt those two players, along with Cole Schwindt and a 2025 first-round pick, over to the Calgary Flames in exchange for young forward Matthew Tkachuk and a 2025 fourth-round pick. And it gets worse. Jonathan Huberdeau wasn't expecting at all to get traded over to any team whatsoever after he had a 115-point season and he wanted to stay in Florida. When Bill Zito called him to tell him he was traded, he basically said, F you, and hung up the phone. At first glance, a lot of people did think that the Florida Panthers would lose this trade, mainly because Huberdeau was coming off of a 115-point season, Weegar is a really solid top 4 defenseman, and Schwindt is a really solid prospect. However, I think they might have actually had the better end of that deal when you look at it now, though. Huberdeau and Weegar were going to cost the Florida Panthers $16 million in retrospect. If they were signed to the same contracts that Calgary signed them to, that's a lot of money. So in retrospect, the Florida Panthers may have won that trade in the long run. However, losing those 3 players still really hurt this team. All those players that I mentioned were expiring at the end of 2022. They all left. Claude Giroux gone, Ben Sherratt gone, Robert Haig gone, Mason Marchment gone, and Nola Shari gone. And what they got back in return free agency rise really was not going to improve that team. They got Michael Del Zotto, Chris Tierney, Mark Stahl, and Eric Stahl. Solid players, but nothing compared to the guys they lost. And it also didn't help that throughout 2022-23 and at the beginning as well, there were a lot of injuries that came to the Panthers. Anthony Duclair's been out since the start of the year. Ekblad's been in and out of the lineup. Barkov's been in and out of the lineup. Gudez has also been in and out of the lineup. And Hornquist has been placed on LTIR and may never play again. So let's resume all the way back to present time on December 30th, 2022. The Panthers are now 15, 16, and 4 for 34 points. They have scored 114 goals and have only let in 120. And they are 9 points out of a playoff spot. At the end of 2021-22, they had 4 30-plus goal scorers, and they had 6 20-plus goal scorers. But however, halfway through 22-23, it is halfway. But they only have 3 10-plus scorers. The one player they got out of that big blockbuster deal, Matthew Tkachuk, is obviously leading the team and is playing pretty well. 15 goals, 25 assists for 40 points. But I really can't say the same for the rest of the team. And in net, they took a gigantic decline as Sergei Bobrovsky in 21-22 had a 2.67 goals against average and a .913 save percentage. However, just a year later, he has a 3.29 goals against average and a .895 save percentage. What many people thought would be a fun-to-watch powerhouse team for so many more years to come has now turned into a middle-of-the-road mid-team like they were years before. And they are just now approaching the halfway mark of the season, and they're going to need a huge turnaround to make the playoffs. And that's the craziest part about the NHL. This stuff can happen. Anyways, if you enjoyed this video, please go make sure to leave a like down below and hit that subscribe button. I would greatly appreciate it. Going to try and make some more videos like this. Anyways, thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. Adios.